Hello again to another Agricultural Reacts, and today we are watching World War II Part X, Warsaw Ghetto Uprising from Royal Casa Grande Rome at the Austin School, and this is part 3 of my reaction. And as you can see, if you watched my previous one, I'm looking exactly the same because I'm recording out all at once, because it's just better that way, I believe. It's a longer video, it's a 1 hour 41, 22 seconds altogether. So I found it after doing first reaction to his talk about how Islam saved Western civilization. You will find the link to a playlist over here, I believe. It's just, if I'm gonna be watching this way, I'll be actually not jumping, not remembering a lot of stuff that Hugh just said. So let's just jump into it. I'm gonna put the timer on for 20 minutes and hopefully we're gonna finish after 20 minutes. If not, well, I'm just gonna make it longer.
The first eugenics laws in the modern period. And they established an IQ test and began IQ testing people. And then the idea being that if you were on the low end of the spectrum, you would be removed from the gene pool by making it so it would be difficult for you to figure out a way to reproduce. And of course, these German nationalists are watching the United States going, oh wow, isn't that a great idea? We can make a better race. And of course, once that gets into the conversation post-World War I, it turns into the conversation about a master race, a perfect race. Now, there's another piece. Hegel didn't mean for this, but Hegel did it anyway. What he said was that the way the world worked was it was a competition between nations. So if you take the Roman experience, there was a Roman Empire. It clashes with the Germanic tribesmen. The Goths, the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Franks, right? These different Germanic tribes, the Lombards, come crashing in to the Roman Empire. And it's a struggle. And both are changed in the process. It's not that the Germans eventually win and the Romans eventually lose. It's that the Germans become more like the Romans and the Romans become more like the Germans as they struggle against each other until there's a new thing. And he calls that thing the synthesis. And then every synthesis has a series of contradictions. And those contradictions are the other nations. And they struggle in a new conflict until they create a new synthesis. So first it's the Goths create Odovacar, right? And the subsequent Goths before the Lombards invade. And actually, before the Lombards invade, Rome tries to retake Italy, and it actually does. It captures Italy just as the Lombards are invading, and then Rome loses Italy again. How embarrassing to lose Italy if you're the Roman Empire. It's like, oh, just too much. It's like every time France lost to Germany. Because they'd lose France. It's so embarrassing. Oh, crap, we lost France again. It's okay, we still have Vietnam. No, you don't think that's like really bizarre and weird? So, that's what Hegel says propels history until the Germans realized their national aspirations because Hegel was a nationalist. He believed that the Germans were so close to being perfect culturally that there was no contradiction. And so as a result, history would end. Now, there is a group of dumb nationalist Germans who knew this. They couldn't understand Hegel. They couldn't read Hegel, but they still knew it. And they went, good enough for me. Let's end history. We will do a war, an epic war. That war will avenge World War I and our humiliating defeat that was caused by the Jews. And then we'll take the master race into a position where it can dominate the world.
Yeah, like why are the Jews always being blamed for everything? Is it because there was a big group and there was a religion? And what was that? I need to find something why it was going like that, because honestly I just can't understand. What's this? Oh, hello fresh. Free dessert for 3 months, guys. If you're interested, check out the 50% of your first box as well. I really kind of want to go and see Robbie Williams' biography, because it looks kind of funny and interesting at the same time. Okay, we'll be back.
Nationalism had taken the Germans down this bizarre path where they began to believe this, but just a small fraction of the population. There were 2 elections in 1932. The first one, the Nazis got 34%. The second one, the Nazis got 32%. They were actually on the decline. But von Hindenburg decided to take a chance on the Nazis, and he had them make the government with their 32%. They created a coalition government, and the next thing you know, Europe is burning to the ground. In part, I think nobody thought what they were planning to do, what Hitler spelt out in his book Mein Kampf, what he had said over and over again in speeches, he wouldn't do it. There's no way he's going to actually do it. Why would he do it? This is crazy. And then, of course, he gets into power, and he immediately starts figuring out how he's going to do it. And part of what he wants to do is expel the population of Jews from Europe. Get rid of them somehow. Now, he's open to killing them, but it'd be easier to just expel them. So that becomes the process that leads to, first the Jews have to wear an armband that has a Star of David, right? And it builds up. Jewish stores have to mark that they have Jewish ownership. Part of the process of doing this also has the result of separating the Jewish identity out. Because if you had walked up to those Jewish Germans in 1932 and said, "What are you?" they would have said, "Ich bin Deutsch." It would have never occurred to them to say, "Ich bin Jude." Because in their minds, I'm a German. Why are you asking? What's the point in asking this? Oh, yeah, I'm also Jewish, but what does that have to do with me? I'm a German. So by doing this, they're putting this wedge, identity wedge, into the population. They're putting the identity wedge into the non-Jewish population, but they're also putting it into the Jewish population. This is on purpose, because they want to eventually cleave that Jewish population off. Now, there's something completely irrational about doing this, but that's exactly where we were in that moment. And where many of us on the planet are today. Like when you hear a leader in India say, "India's for Hindus." Wait, what about the Buddhists and the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims and the Jains and the Sikhs? There's so many other religions in India. How can you say it's for one religion? What happens to them? What's that about? Right? So, to advance this a little bit, in September 1st, 1939, Germany attacks Poland. So I'm leaving out a bunch of material to get us to this moment, but I'll cover it in other lectures. Germany attacks Poland. The bulk of the fighting really takes about 2 weeks. The Germans do a thing called Bewegungskrieg. There's an English journalist on the ground observing it. He names it Blitzkrieg, lightning war. And the idea behind it is that not that you fight everything, that you punch holes in the enemy's forces, get behind them, surround them, and then get them to surrender. And then that way you don't have to defeat the whole army. And then you just keep doing that until you get to wherever you're trying to get to. You just keep cutting off chunks of their army and putting them in POW camps. It takes another 2 weeks or so for Warsaw to fall. So by October, Poland is down. It's taken out. So at that point, the Nazis begin to act immediately. They decide they're going to round up the Jewish Polish population and ghettoize them. So it's not enough that they're going to ultimately exterminate them. The first step is that they need to ghettoize them. So Poland gets the misfortune of being one of the countries with the highest deaths in World War II. So right about 65 million people die in World War II. That's like a little bit bigger than 2 Texases worth of people die in World War II. 5 million were Polish. So Poland gets the misfortune of being one of the highest countries in terms of death toll, but also percentage of people that dies. Right? Soviet Union was number 1, and then after that China, after that Germany, and then I can't remember. I think Poland, Indonesia, but it might be the other way around. It might be Indonesia, Poland. They're right about the same. So Poland is in 3rd or 4th place, 4th or 5th place. On top of that, the Jewish population in Europe especially gets hammered. There were about 11 million Jews living in Europe. Most people say 6 million Jews died. It's probably 5.1 to 5.4 million. It's in that range. I'm not trying to do this to downgrade the Holocaust, to be clear. Somebody's going to be like, oh my God, he's a Holocaust denier. I'm doing this because one of the things I've seen is Holocaust deniers focus on the number going, it's an exaggerated number, what else are you lying about? So I feel like if you just take that away from them and go with the lower number, the more conservative number, then you don't have to waste your time spinning your wheels arguing about the number.
I'm still perplexed about people saying that Holocaust never existed. Like, seriously, I could understand if someone said something that happened thousands of years ago haven't happened, but that this has just happened less than 100 years ago. There's still people living that were through it, and if there are people that they actually dare to say that it didn't exist, that it didn't happen, it's something that is just literally pisses me off.
It's just a suggestion to deal with Holocaust deniers, especially because I don't emotionally see the difference between 5 million dead and 6 million
It's
dead.
still millions of people,
It really feels like that's just as horrible, especially since it's almost half the population is Jewish Europeans. Yeah. I feel like that's just, you don't have to do the exaggeration thing. It's obviously going to be your choice, but take this away from Holocaust deniers, is my suggestion. Here's another piece of the tragedy. So, of the 5 million or so, as many as 5.4 million Jews in Europe who die in World War II, 3 million were Polish. Of the 5 million Poles who died, 3 million were Polish. In other words, 60% of the Jews who died were Polish, 60% of the Poles who died were Jewish. That weird little numerical thing could also be a mnemonic device, but it also shows that at some level the Holocaust wasn't just a disaster for the Jewish population, it was also a disaster for Poland. In fact, a lot of the Holocaust takes place in Poland, about 60% of it, including the fact that Auschwitz is there. So in a really weird way, Poland becomes ground zero for this nightmare. So when we talk about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, it's not a coincidence that it's taking place in Warsaw, the capital of Poland. So the Germans immediately start acting. I'm going to stop doing that. The Nazis, because I kind of feel like you won 32% of the population. There were a lot of Germans who were not Nazis. In fact, there was a huge anti-Nazi resistance movement, including multiple assassination attempts on Hitler. So, I'll be careful with my language. The Nazis immediately began trying to grab that Jewish Polish population and ghettoize it. In the case of Warsaw, they carved out a chunk of the old city right in the middle, and they put 300 to 400,000 Jews into the ghetto. The idea being that they'd be confined in a space that's too small. It was about 3.3 square kilometers. So it's a tiny space. There wouldn't be enough sanitation. There wouldn't be enough water. There wouldn't be enough food. And there'd be no real economy. So there'd be no currency coming in. So it would reduce the population to a barter economy where basically everybody is essentially unemployed. And in that way, you could use them as slave labor, basically, in nearby factories if that was a thing you wanted to exploit. And then it would also then start to set it up so that you could figure out what the Endlösung is, what the final solution is. And of course, a group of Nazis meet in Wannsee. It's there's a conference in Wannsee, and they try to figure out what the final solution is, and they conclude that the final solution is extermination. Initially, they were trying to deport the Jewish population, but the United States and Great Britain were especially resistant to the idea. Americans were polled. 67% of Americans said they feared that the Jews would come to the United States, and they were actually secretly spies for the Germans, and they would do acts of terrorism. And they didn't want that Jewish population coming to the United States. It was to the point where we literally turned around Jewish refugees and sent them back to Europe to die. So
You can hear about that, don't you?
after multiple attempts to export the Jewish population, the Nazis decided, all right, we're just going to kill them all. So the Nazis began creating death camps. So this is a good chance to sort of clarify the difference between a concentration camp and a death camp. A concentration camp could also be called an internment camp, a prison camp, a slave labor camp. For that matter, you can call it a reservation or a plantation. The idea is you take a population of people and you basically imprison them, and you're probably also going to take slave labor out of their day, right? Work them in a factory, have them produce something for you. The goal isn't necessarily to kill them, but if they die along the way, you're probably not especially upset about it. You're not torn up. The real goal is really just to sort of take them out of the general population, isolate them, and maybe extract slave labor. A death camp, your goal is to kill. So the camp is established just for the purpose of exterminating the population of people brought to the camp. The Germans did open up at multiple times 6 different death camps. They had multiple concentration camps. Bergen-Belsen was a concentration camp. Dachau was a concentration camp. Auschwitz had a concentration camp and a death camp, so it had both. It had the capability to intern and extract slave labor, and it also had the ability to just, once you arrived, you would be terminated. Once the Germans have decided to go for extermination, they decide to start clearing out the ghettos. So in 1942, over the course of about a month, the Nazis show up in Warsaw, the Warsaw Ghetto, and they go, look, we would love to relocate you guys. We get your suffering. This place sucks. We get it. We're conquering the Soviet Union right now. We're tearing it to pieces. It's pretty clear they're going to lose eventually. Here's what we propose. We don't want you here. We don't want you this far west. What we want to do is we want to relocate you and put you as colonists into that Soviet territory where we're going to exterminate the local population there and create a new home for you. And it won't be Europe. Well, it will be. It'll just be far Eastern Europe. And so the Jews began boarding trains to go to these new colonies in 1942. Only there's no new colony waiting for them. They're going to go to Treblinka. And Treblinka is one of the death camps. So in other words, they're going to go through the process that you're probably familiar with, which includes the showers, and they're going to be gassed with Zyklon B. And then there's the process of, going through the teeth and finding gold teeth, figuring out if you can do anything with the hair and the skin, that horrific, nightmarish hell that the Nazis are going to inflict on that Jewish population. For the record, the Nazis didn't just do this to Jews, they also did this to the Roma, also incorrectly known as gypsies, right? They did this to other populations as well, but obviously their hatred and focus was really definitely on the Jewish population. As this is unfolding, it becomes clear, somebody leaks it to the Jews in the ghetto that they're not going to a colony to be relocated, that they're being killed. By the time the Germans stopped this operation, they'd moved out about 3/4 of the ghetto. Somewhere around 250, 300,000 people had been pulled out of the ghetto. So it had been dramatically shrunk in population, So the Nazis went ahead and actually shrank the ghetto in terms of geography. They got rid of about 5/6 of it. Like they left just a little piece. And it was 2 separate pieces at that point. When word finally reaches the ghetto at the end of 42 that there was no colony, that there was Treblinka, and they're all going to die, the ghetto leaders go, oh, all right, I'm not doing this. And they decide they're gonna fight. They make the decision. We're gonna fight the Nazis, we're gonna lose, we're gonna be killed. We're not probably even gonna kill that many of them, but at least we're gonna die picking the way we're going to die. At least we're gonna go into this genocide on our own terms. And that becomes sort of the mantra of the ghetto at that point. The leader of the ghetto, I was trying to remember his name. He was the Jewish leader of the ghetto. When he figures out what's happening, he kills himself. At that point, the 2 military organizations form inside the ghetto, the ZZW and the ZOB. The ZOB was a leftist organization with explicitly socialist goals. It, as a result, was leaning pro-Soviet. The ZZW was pro-Western allies, and as a result, it made direct connection with the Polish Home Guard with the intention that, on the other side of World War II, they would work with the Polish Home Guard to make sure Poland didn't end up in the Soviet sphere. Like they're even though they know they're finished, they're still thinking about the future. They're still making these choices. About 600 ZOB soldiers form up, about 400 ZZW soldiers form up. They make contact with the Home Guard. The Home Guard was really keen to work with the ZZW, so they begin sending in as much as they think they can afford. And so
I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna check something else, because I heard about what he says ZOB, well, it's actually job because it's with Polish letter, but the ZZW, I don't think I ever heard. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find something here about that, but just not that much about it. I mean, there is obviously, I'm not saying there isn't, because it's a ZW, but there is no that letter. I'm gonna put it here, what letter I'm talking about. Basically, it's from, this is how we spell Jewish, Żydowski. It's a Z with the dot on it. It's not used in any other language as far as I am aware. We do have certain letters in Polish language that are not used anywhere else. Żydowski Związek Wojskowy, that makes sense. Oh yeah. Yeah, but why? I never heard about it. I'm just kind of confused, but I mean, yeah, like I keep saying, I finished my education about 20 years ago. That was the beginning. My historical education and stuff like that was during the 90s, so I'm guessing a lot of my history wasn't really changed. I mean, after the 1990 when we Jewish military union. Okay, that explains it. Here. So, Żydowski Związek Wojskowy, ZW, Polish for Jewish Military Union. I can't speak Yiddish, so I can't really say that. It was an underground resistance organization operating during World War II in the area of the Warsaw Ghetto, which fought during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and 1944 Warsaw Uprising. It was formed primarily of former officers of the Polish army in late 1939, soon after the start of the German occupation of Poland. Due to the GZW's close ties with the Armia Krajowa, that's what I'm saying, AK, the home army. Yeah, this is I'm saying, like, basic. For other users, see Home Guard. Yeah, because it's Home Army. This is what I was talking in the previous part. It's just basically Home Army would be the Polish, linked to the Polish government in exile. And JOB, it's Żydowska Organizacja Bojowa, Jewish Fighting Organization. It's the other one, it's more socialist, yeah. So, I heard about JOB, I believe, because, like I said, my education, my school years were happening in the 90s, so I'm presuming they haven't really found that much time to maybe change all the school books and stuff like that after that. About that. Most of my history was actually mostly focused on Polish interests. So we obviously were learning about Jewish in Poland as well, because that's obviously important. That was part of our history too. But I think they were focusing mostly on what was Polish underground state and things like that. So yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna finish up for this part. And we're just gonna be going up to another one again. We are at 1 hour and 2 minutes mark, so we still have less than 40 minutes left, so another 2 parts, I guess. Excuse me. And yeah, so 2 more parts. So next part, you're gonna see this one. Next part you're gonna see in 2 weeks time, and tomorrow the usual stuff. So I see you tomorrow. Bye.